All right, welcome back to the Vault Report. I'm here with Davidson men's basketball head coach Matt McKillop. Appreciate the time, Coach. How we doing?
Nathan, thanks for having me. Doing great. It's summertime, and we've got players on campus, new guys here, and we get to, we've been swimming in the transfer portal like everybody else for the last several months. So getting back to actually doing what we love and being on the court with our players is finally where we are.
Definitely. And I want to talk to you about that. I've kind of asked all coaches this in the way that obviously the timing, the landscape has kind of changed. Is there any built-in time for you in terms of reflection? It seems like there really isn't much time at all. But do you have that time, just to kind of be able to look at the last season, or is it really just, you got to kind of hit the ground running and go?
Yeah, we're fighting for that time, and we're trying to find that time. The season ends, and as soon as you try to take that deep breath, and you start to reflect, and you want to begin to plan your workouts and what guys can individually get better at. That's really where you reflect, as you have those meetings after the season, and really try to help your players improve at what we believe they need to get better at, but also what they want to get better at and what they want to become. So it's you have to keep that at the forefront of your mind, and it's really challenging because every few minutes there's something you have to do from a recruiting standpoint. Very different than any springs in the past, I would say, for our staff especially. But thankfully we've got really good kids in our program, and they just want to get better, and they're constantly seeking out ways to develop and seeking out ways to improve, and that allows us to be even more committed to them.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned obviously, the portal, there is no program in college basketball that isn't affected. But you also bring, for you guys specifically, just talking about Davidson, obviously a lot of great guys back. And I want to start with, a guy like Reed Bailey, obviously Coachera as well. Two guys, average double figures last season. Just the importance of having them back in the fold and to be able to continue to build around them.
Yeah, well, they're both leaders in their own way, which when you have continuity, and it's crazy, that doesn't really exist very much right now. And we're bringing back four starters, which we almost have to keep reminding ourselves, like we gotta be pretty excited. Who in the country is returning four starters? Now our starters have to get better, and we've got to build around those guys and improve overall. But yeah, I would say it's easy to say that it starts with Connor and it starts with Reed. And I mentioned leadership, and Connor's got an incredible personality. He's got major leadership qualities that you love in the gym and out of the gym. Reed has an incredible work ethic. I mean, he is a worker, and he is in the gym constantly. And in many ways, that's his best attribute as far as leadership. But I think Reed in the last 10 games of the year averaged 17 points a game. I think Connor Kachera averaged almost 19 points a game. So guys have just got better and better and better. And roles on our team evolved last year throughout the season. Much sadly due to David Skogman going down with injury, and then a lot of people keying in on Grant Huffman and eliminating some of the things that we really designed for him to do well. But those two started to thrive as the season ended, and they know how close we were to being a very different team as far as the wins column looked. But they know how much better we got and they got.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not just those two. You look at Durkin, you look at someone like Hunter Adam, even who again meaningful minutes. Where do you see in terms of when you look at player development? And I don't know if you've started off-season workouts. Assume maybe you have, but just what that's going to look like this summer, and some of these core guys, like you said, four starters coming back. What you're looking specifically, maybe with could start with Adam, Hunter Adam, and where you see his game continue to evolve.
Yeah, we could speak about Hunter. We could talk about Ricky Gadini, who hadn't played many meaningful minutes in his career, and then he just proved it day in and day out in practice. And in January, we went with him. And then Sean Logan, who really stepped into the void left by David Skogman, and it didn't, you didn't see the scoring punch that David had, but Sean changed our defense, and our defense is why we were in every game towards the end of the year. And Sean, I think, finished the season fifth in the nation in block percentage. So. I think our struggles last year were on the offensive end, and we didn't shoot the ball great, even though we've got guys that can make shots. But just trying to facilitate those baskets when we didn't have a lot of experience, and that's really been the development piece, both for Hunter, for continuing for our who I believe to be skilled and talented offensive players like Reed, like Sean, Ricky Gadini, and Bobby Durkin and Mike Lockney, who didn't play very much. So I've kind of named a bunch of guys, but we're going to rely on each of those guys this year. And they all have the things that they do well, but they all know how to play. They have skills to pass, dribble, and shoot. And I believe they fit into our offense really well. And we're going to find ways to make our offense better around them.
And I do want to talk, especially the younger guys. I remember last year we talked about, obviously your incoming freshmen, and you just mentioned some in that. And obviously it is very hard for freshmen to get into those rotations. Oftentimes I think, fans don't see obviously the development that's happening, whether they're seeing a lot of time on the floor or not. But that freshman to sophomore year can be a big leap. How impressed are you with these young guys? And you think they can make an impact going into, this next season? Some that obviously already have.
Yeah, well, you could speak on each of them, and they were in the game at crucial crunch time moments. And Bobby Durkin made what was a game-winning shot against Maryland, but Bobby Durkin should have sent the game to overtime when he made a great three against Richmond towards the end of the game. We had Sean Logan, even before David Scope made it down. Sean Logan was on the defensive end on final possessions of the games because not only could he force people to miss shots, but he could get rebounds as well. And then Hunter Adam, he had a shot go in and out against Richmond at home that would have won a game in regulation. So there's such value to that experience. And, I wish we had older guys getting experiences and then making those plays. But we're going to be pretty excited this year when we find ourselves in those close situations. And we've been there probably more than anybody else, with young guys that have been there more than anybody else. And that's why those guys gain the trust of their coaching staff, gain the trust of their teammates. And that is, I think, fueled their willingness to improve even more this offseason.
Definitely. And you had mentioned, because I do want to go back. And again, I think every program can say, obviously, retention is so important, right? You're going to lose guys in this day and age. But specifically for you, in terms of getting the right guys, the right families in the system, right? And we've talked about the young, especially the young guys in particular. But, for you, in terms of like going into this offseason, what is for you just kind of the joy that continues to help? Because I feel like there's a lot of, this is a rambling question, I apologize, but there is a lot of negativity sometimes with what's going on in college basketball. But again, retention is still a big part of the program. You have it at Davidson, but just the joy to, like you said, to kind of shut the door on the transfers done. You now have these guys coming in, and you have added some transfers and some new freshmen, but that joy of just coaching these guys up and having a lot of guys that have still, again, were with you last season.
Yeah, well, the guys that have remained here at Davidson and the new guys, it doesn't change in terms of what we look for. And we need guys that value everything about Davidson College. And Davidson College is different than everywhere else. We don't have Power 5 football. Like many schools in the Atlantic 10 and the Big East, we are basketball is our flag bearing sport. But it's a very good school academically, and it's a challenging school academically, but it's a small school. So we're very different, and you've got to love and appreciate every one of those things if you want to thrive here. Like you could do okay if you like school, but you got to want to be just as good in the classroom as you want to be on the basketball court. So we are constantly looking for guys that value all those things. And I think that is often what leads to continuity, is because we have a lot of guys who are so like-minded, and they're all here for the right reasons, that then ultimately like playing together. So we want guys that will not fracture that, not fracture the values of what we stand for, but not fracture the locker room that we have in terms of guys that want to be together and play together. I mentioned 4 starters returning. Those guys love playing together. Of course they want to be here. They want to play together. And the new guys that we've added, both 2 transfers and then 3 incoming freshmen, they fit that mold just as well as those older guys. And we often talk, not just recently, over the years here at Davidson, about passing the torch. And, when I played at Davidson, there were guys that passed that torch down to my class. And then we believe that we passed that torch on to the next class. And that's what we've brought that up a little more than we maybe have in recent years, about passing the torch, because it doesn't really exist in many places the way it used to. And we are going to do everything we can to continue to have that be the case. And, we've got guys that just got here this weekend in terms of new players. We've got guys that have been here for about 2 weeks, but their brief time in the gym already has shown that those are the guys that are going to pass that torch to the next group of guys that fit and value everything that we want and believe in here.
I appreciate that answer after that rambling question. Like, cause I had my wife's voice in the head. Like,
I hope I gave you what you were looking for.
You gave more than what I was looking for.
but what's great is we've got a guy like Connor Kacheri who started elsewhere, but the second he got here to Davidson, he was all in, and he's been all in for 3 years in every little thing about our program. And he has passed that along already to some of our younger guys like Mike Loughnane and Bobby Durkin and Nick Koval, incoming freshman. And he's been here, I think, 36 or probably a little longer, 36 hours, maybe 3 days. And he's all and those guys are already getting Nick to buy into to exactly what makes them enjoy their experience here. So it's the culture doesn't exactly the culture of college basketball right now. It's challenging for a place like Davidson. So more than anything, we've got to continue to bring in all of the right type of people. And we may not get it right every single time, but when we get on the court right today in practice, I know we're going to be out there with guys that we fully believe are a part of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And last question, like I said, I know time is limited. I appreciate the time. Scheduling obviously is such a big thing with a conference like the Atlantic 10. Coaches have spoke about it. I feel like it's one of those conferences no one really wants to play. I mean, it's the highest of a mid-major, if we want to call it that. What for you in terms of, I don't know, in terms of what's been announced or not, but just in terms of how that's evolving the non-conference schedule for you guys?
Yeah, it's challenging because I think it caught a lot of traction on Twitter maybe over the weekend, but Maryland, who we played last year, so we follow them a little bit closer, maybe even some other programs in the Big Ten. Maryland's still in the Big Ten, is that right?
Yes.
I think they still are.
Yeah.
So, but they announced their schedule, and people have pointed out that they scheduled a lot of teams in, like, I don't know, 300 plus KenPom or 300 plus net from last year, which Iowa State was probably most well known for in the last year. And it seems like it's a recipe for success in terms of putting together for the right teams a resume. So and I remember a few years ago, it was like, we got to schedule the toughest schedule possible to have the games that are going to prove that we're good enough to play in the field. Every year, it seems like the pathway is changing towards how you got to put together the right schedule. We want to put together a schedule that's exciting for our fans, excited for our players and their families. And it's going to make us better when we get to Atlantic 10 play and we're ready to, go 10 rounds every single night. And I think the easy thing for us to point out, we're in the battle for Atlantis, and it is a monster of a tournament. And Creighton dropped out, but then we had Providence. And I couldn't tell you half the rosters of some of the teams. I know there's been major turnover at Louisville, who's in it, Indiana, who's in the event. I know Providence because their coach used to be in the A10, and some A10 players joined him at Providence. So I think they've got some roster turnover in many positive ways. In addition to Oklahoma, who's in it, West Virginia, Arizona, Gonzaga. I mean, it is an incredible tournament, and we're thrilled to be a part of it. But it's going to be challenging. But I know our guys are going to be fired up to get ready for it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that one. Like I said, I mean, there's there's nothing there, no cupcakes in that tournament. I know Davidson fans are looking forward to, obviously seeing you guys partake in that as well. But listen, Coach, I greatly appreciate, the time. Look forward to kind of touching base, obviously, before the season would get started. But I appreciate it as always.
Well, great, Nathan. Thanks for taking the time to talk about Davidson in June. And hopefully we can talk again soon.
Absolutely.